what's going on nationally. We have a Supreme Court basically legislating from the bench. We've got a Speaker of the House and McConnell that are simply ignoring the conservatives, and they're totally doing whatever the Chamber of Commerce wants to do. They don't care what the conservatives think. At the state level, we've got a governor that's doing some good things, but he also is pushing pre-K spending, which I think is every conservative's nightmare, and there's more to that story that's even more disturbing than that. You're free to ask some of these state reps if they want to care to elaborate on that. But locally, as you've already heard, we've got a county judge that raises county taxes every time he can. We've got school districts, both here and in Weatherford, that simply cannot get enough money. They tax, they spend, they borrow, they do everything they can. They're being fiscally totally responsible for our money. So it's really depressing. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I met one of the first really outstanding state reps, Matt Krause, that I finally had a little hope. And since then, that I met Stickland and Turner and Leach and Pat Fallon, some really just phenomenal people. And if you ever had a chance to talk to some of them, they will give you hope. And I actually had several more minutes to tell you why I feel so encouraged by these guys. But these guys, just to give you one other quick point, I was down in D.C., my wife and I were this past session, and we were watching from the balcony. These three guys in particular, not only did they have the three most conservative voting records, but little bills that would come up. I remember a $30 million bill that was going on in El Paso that really think, well, how that would affect us, and they put it on local consents, when really Texas taxpayers, and so because Texas taxpayers were going to be affected by that bill, Jonathan Stickland was fighting, doing points of order. Every single bill that came across the floor, these guys, especially Jonathan, were there fighting, I mean, just day in and day out, every single day, every single bill, they were watching this stuff. And they were truly watching our liberties and our freedoms like we've never seen in Austin before. And they are just phenomenal individuals. They don't care what people say about them. They're totally resistant to it. I think Matt Rinaldi in particular, basically, the more insults you throw at him, the more of a smile he has on his face. He doesn't care. They just completely ignore what's being thrown at him. And I think that's what's allowed them to do what they're doing down there. And so this is my light at the end of the tunnel. This is where, when I get really discouraged what's going on nationally, I think about these guys. And like I said earlier, we need to send them reinforcements, but there are some phenomenal people down there doing great things. And so I want to introduce our first speaker, outstanding state rep, ranked the third most conservative member in the Texas House by the Rice University, given a 100 by Texans for Fiscal Responsibility and maybe 100 on every other conservative scorecard. A guy that was in the Air Force for more than 20 years, had retired in 1999, and when 9/11 happened, he said, I want to go back. I can't just sit around and do nothing. He said, but I don't want to be in the Air Force. I want to go over there so I can actually kill some people. Maybe you didn't say that, but you wanted some action. You were very upset about what happened 9/11, and that's the kind of guy that this is. He has tenacity, and when I helped him just a little bit on his campaign, and the guy was like a war horse. He had his campaign executed better than any campaign I've ever seen been involved in politically. It was like a mission. It was like a military mission, and they just stuck. They had goals. They went out and beat all those goals, and he carried that tenacity down to Austin. So I'm very, very happy to introduce Tony Tinderholt to you tonight.
Thank you. We're doing it again too. We went out and knocked about 250 doors this weekend in the precinct of someone that announced against us. We want to make sure they know that we're here and we're in their face. And you can't run to the right of me because you're not going to beat these two guys. And I'm happy being number 3 if I'm behind them, because these guys are superstars. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot from Jonathan, thank you. Learned a lot from Matt. I'm better looking, but they scored better than I did. I'm okay with that. Look, down in Austin, it really is a fight. It's a fight every single day. And what we need from you guys is we need you to stay involved, get more people involved, expect more from your elected officials, and hold them accountable for it. And you know how to hold them accountable? At the ballot box. You need to go vote. You need to get your neighbors out to vote. We're willing to go down to Austin, and we're going to fight for you and your tax dollars every minute of every day for those 5 months we're down there. It's really easy for us to go down there and do that. Someone earlier was asking me, wasn't it hard down there? And I said, no, it's really easy when you tell people what you're going to do and then you go do it and you come back and you don't have to try to remember the lies you might have told. The three of us go down to Austin, and we come back and we tell you what we did. We don't have to remember any fake stuff because we went and did what we told you we'd do. All three of us knocked thousands of doors. And we talk to people at their doorsteps, and we know exactly what the people want. The people in Austin aren't going to tell me what to do. The people in Arlington tell me what to do. So it makes it really easy to go down there and do the right thing. Now, while I was down there, I built quite a bit of rapport with different folks, and I was respectful to everybody. But I'll tell you one thing that I never did is I would never, ever, ever compromise my principled vote. I think the three of us, our votes alone, our individual votes, probably beat some of the people, the Republicans, if you took their no votes on killing bills and put them together. Some of them, take three of them, put their votes together. We probably outdid them 1-2 or 1-3. There's a lot of people down in Austin that are going to tell you that they're conservative Republicans. Now, I understand that there's different levels of conservative. But the one thing that the three of us refuse to do is go to the door and tell you we're going to do something and then go down to Austin and do something different and come back. And you're going to hear me say that over and over and over again. And the reason that I repeat that is I think it's really important to make sure that when they come to your door or they send you a mailer or they send you an email or you see on Facebook that they said, I'm going to do A, B, or C, that you look and make sure they did it. And when they didn't, you look them in the eye and tell them, I'm working against you. I'm going to find somebody to replace you because last time I checked, you don't work for me. I work for you. You're my boss. You decide whether I go back to Austin or not. So the people that are out here in Parker County and the different areas, you get to decide who goes back down to Austin and who's going to fight for you. Don't send those people back that you don't want. Don't send those people back to Austin that don't do what they're told. Because you're the boss. We work for you. It's really simple. I appreciate you guys. I think we're probably going to do some questions and answers in a few minutes. So, Mike, anything else?
We're going to let all three of y'all talk, and then if it's okay with y'all, then afterwards all three of them can be up here and you can ask them, any of them or all together, any particular questions. So the two of the guys are freshmen. They just finished their first session. Jonathan was one of that incredible freshman class was elected 4 years ago. Was ranked number 1 2 sessions ago, and has continued to be absolutely one of the best people we have down there fighting. There's probably no one that fights harder than Jonathan Stickland. I know there's no one that fights harder than Jonathan Stickland down there. And not only that, he takes this cause so seriously. He's doing everything he can to actually make sure that reinforcements are sent down there, and he does things that you don't even hear about that I think you all would just be blown away with what he's doing to make sure that liberty is maintained down in Austin. So our favorite, Jonathan Stickland.
Careful. Raise your hand if you're sick and tired of being sold out by politicians in general. That's why I ran for office. I was 27 years old. I'm actually a high school dropout. I got my GED, immediately started to go to work. And never, ever, ever considered running for a political office in my entire life. No one in my family has ever run for dog catcher, nothing at all. There was a 16-year incumbent, a trial lawyer by the name of Todd Smith, who had ran in District 92 for years. He was the golden child. He was born and raised by a single mother in the church, in First Baptist Church of Euless. Great story, hard-working guy, but he went down there and he capitulated with the liberals in Austin. He voted to give our tax dollars out of our pocket to subsidize people who were here breaking the law illegally, illegal aliens, paying for their college tuition. It was time and time again. And I started going to the Tea Party meetings back when the wave came in 2010. And I ended up going to the Northeast Tarrant Tea Party. And I met with Julie McCarty and Connie Burton, now Senator Connie Burton, had started up this club. And it was right when federally, if y'all remember this, the first time it kind of became a big deal that we were going to raise the debt ceiling. Do y'all remember the first time that we were debating on whether we should raise the debt ceiling or not? And poor Congressman Michael Burgess showed up at that meeting, and I had a bigger beard then than I do now. Had on flip-flops and cargo shorts, and I was ticked. I was mad. And I got to the back microphone and I stood up and I grilled this guy. And he said, well, Jonathan, you just don't understand how it works up there. Raise your hand if you're sick and tired of hearing that. I just don't understand. You don't understand everything that was going on. There were a lot of deals, and it's just different than you would think. It's only different because you make it different. And I have people tell me all the time, Jonathan, when you go down there and you call points of order and you knock bills off the local and consent calendar and you tattletale on your colleagues to the media and you post a bad bill of the week on Facebook, when you shine a light on, when you do these things, it's going to be hard for you to be effective. And that's a word that our opposition uses all the time, isn't it? You got to be effective. You got to fight for a seat at the table. And I'm here to tell you folks that as conservatives who've been watching government grow around us at every single turn, whether it is our taxes or losing our liberties, we do not need to fight for a seat at the table. We need to look these politicians in the eye and tell them there's not a table. We're not playing the game. It's no more business as usual. We have to go down there and throw bombs and raise ruckus until we have gotten to a point where we have the majority. Because right now we don't. Texas has been blessed by the Lord. You can't tell. But if you think that Texas is conservative enough, then I would ask you to re-examine your heart. Because I honestly believe that we have an obligation to our children and the next generation to leave this place in a better state than when we received it. And if we just accept that Texas is a conservative place where I can still have a gun and things are generally okay, then you need to wake up and smell the coffee. Because there are people in the Republican Party down in Austin right now who will take every single cent out of your pocket that they think they can get away with, and they will take every single liberty from you because they honestly believe that they can live your life and make decisions for you better than you can yourself. And we have to stand up and we have to reject that. It's going to take bold people. I tell people all the time, voting record is important, and I appreciate the scorecards who are doing that stuff, but there's more of a story than just the votes. There's more to it than pushing the button. We are going to have to get fighters. People who are unapologetically Christian conservative folks who are going to draw a line in the sand and say no more. End of story. That's what we've done. I've been so encouraged by the gentlemen who joined me this last session. These guys were awesome. It was wonderful to have a true competition for who the most conservative member of the Texas House is. I could argue with you why I should be on the votes that some guy at Rice University or whatever, but I think it was literally one vote. But anyways, look, it is a good thing to have competition. I will tell you this too, because I want to be positive as much as I can. The Lord is working in the state of Texas. Because folks like you, I have been traveling around the state speaking in different groups. They're mad. They're madder than ever before. But they're not just mad and go to a Tea Party rally or something like that. They're mad and getting educated. They're mad and they're running for office. They're mad and they're writing checks to people who are running for office. And that's what it needs. This movement is young, and it's growing, and it's scaring them to death, and I love every minute of it. So thank you all. We're going to answer your questions, but I'll turn it over for now.
Thanks, Jonathan. And so we'll let Matt debate the number one issue, whether or not. All three of these guys are absolutely fantastic, but Matt's someone that my wife and I we met 2 years ago in May, and we had about a 2.5-hour lunch with him, and we just walked away going, wow, this is just amazing. And also, just as a quick note, I'm going to embarrass my friend Rush Van. Rush, I actually was so impressed before these guys got down there. I took Tony Tinderholt and Matt Rinaldi to dinner with my friend Rush over here in the orange hat, and Dick Stinson next to him, both of them as a matter of fact. And it was actually perfect timing. Tony was, I asked him very late, so he had to get off, he was getting off work late, so he was a little bit late. So Matt actually started off, and he talked to Rush and Matt and talked to them for a little bit. And they were just, you could tell they were really enjoying what they're hearing from Matt. And then Tony got there, and after Tony finished, Rush, I don't know if you remember this, you turned to me, you looked at me, and you said, where are you finding these guys? I don't know. They just keep coming. I mean, like this Thomas McNutt, they're just coming out of the woodworks, and they're just fantastic. That's right. And Bo Prince, that you're going to hear from tonight. And when there's like, there literally can be 30 more of these guys coming, and you're going to get to hear one of the top challengers right here in a second. But anyway, this guy, after 2.5 hour lunch with him, my wife and I were just so impressed, and we were so encouraged about where. So we knocked on doors, we gave him a little money, and this guy did not disappoint. He got down there, and usually as a freshman, and I think Jonathan can attest to this, you don't typically stand up at the back mic or front mic. I'm not sure where it was. When you're like the first couple of weeks, but the first week you're talking about rules. I mean, you're fighting over rules. But this guy brought his intellectual prowess to the table and actually kicked liberals' butt down there, and basically won several of the rules debates. Not only did he have the courage to stand up there and fight the people that had been down there for decades, he actually beat them. And so there was stuff all over the internet showing his little some of the speeches he gave, but. So he didn't disappoint him. Like I said, when Rick and I were down there watching from the balcony, watching these three guys fight for all these bills was so impressive. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Matt Rinaldi from Irving to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was it's wonderful to be here in Parker County. I absolutely love the area. It's beautiful out here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. Heard from two of the greatest reps we have in office. Honestly, legislating is a team sport. We each play different roles. We each play to our strengths, and nobody can do the same thing and expect to do it well. I could never do what Jonathan does. Nobody can. Only he can do that. Same thing with Tony as well. And, you know, it's just a pleasure to be able to serve with them. One thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess as a freshman and as a first year, a couple of the things that always intrigued me when I was a Tea Party member, a conservative in groups, was what happens to people when they get there? Why? And two, you know, Jonathan talked about a seat at the table. What does that get you? Can you be effective if you're a conservative? Regarding the first thing, you know, I got elected, we went down, we went to orientation, and the first thing that they told us was, okay, you know all those things about Second Amendment rights and pro-life and all those other issues? They call them red meat issues. That's just stuff we talk about back home. We don't actually do that. That's what they told us. That's what they actually said. They didn't even hide it. I was surprised that they would actually be that open about it, but they actually believe that. They believe that they are down there to get along with Democrats. Going along to getting along is actually the culture. And that's what they try to instill in you as well. Because when there are people who don't, they have to answer to you. Because you're getting the real story. Whether it be outside groups or other state reps, you'll know what's really happening. And then they can't go along to get along. And it makes it harder on them. That's ultimately the motivation. You know, I'd always thought, well, is it money? Is it the lobbyists giving them money? It's not even anything that severe. It's just a lack of backbone, to be honest with you. It's peer pressure. Peer pressure is what they use to get you in line. And when, I don't know about these guys, but when I saw that that's all that they had, it confused me. I wanted a better explanation for it. You know, there was one particular story which was my favorite moment of the session, for at least me, because it was the pro-life bill, and it was the judicial bypass bill, which would make it harder for minors to use the judicial system to get an abortion without their parents' consent. Now, in the State Affairs Committee, it was actually stripped down. On the floor, we added amendments on to make it stronger. Matt Krause, representative from Tarrant County, had a great amendment to make it a stronger bill. Then the Republicans started getting weak-kneed, and the Democrats started to threaten to kill the bill. Because they had some mysterious and secret way to kill an abortion bill that apparently they wouldn't use unless we gave up on this one thing. You have to pretty much think if the Democrats could kill an abortion bill, they would just kill the abortion bill. But people were scared of it. But in order to make the deal with the Democrats, they had to get us to withdraw all of our amendments. One of the amendments was mine. And it turned out, you know, for about an hour, half an hour, everyone started to try to convince me to pull my amendment. And I said no. And then more people tried to get me to pull my amendment. And I said no. They tried to convince me that my amendment actually hurts the anti-abortion cause. And then I said, if it did, why did the Democrats want it off? So it got to a point in the night, and we went till about midnight that night, where I was sitting alone at my desk, and I was the only person sitting down. The Democrats were caucusing in the back. The Republicans, probably about 50 of them, were just nervously talking in the front. And one of the Democrats comes up to me and goes, what are they talking about? And I said, me. And it was, every 10 minutes, one of them would come by and say, you really need to pull this because of this reason. And I went, no. There's nothing you can do to make me pull this. And they really, that's what they use. They use peer pressure. Ultimately, guess what? The Democrats knew I wasn't caving. They gave in. We won the debate. The ultimate bill that passed the Senate had, I think it was 5 of 6 amendments that we proposed. It was the strongest bill we possibly proposed. Just one example of how it's more than just your vote. By the way, when we were talking with some of the pro-life groups after, I think my favorite line was, they said, well, what happened? What did it? And Jonathan said, I think the tide turned once Matt said they would have to kill him. You know, that's one way. Another way is, you know what? People vote for everything, and they do because they trust leadership. You can't really be effective if you go down there and take leadership's offer of, hey, by the way, if you go with us and just listen to us and give us your vote, we'll give you a shiny bill with your name on it you can take home and tell people you did something. That's not leadership, okay? What leadership is affecting the debate, like we did in that pro-life debate and so many other debates. That's what true leadership is, and that's what affecting the debate actually is. It turns out that people would take votes like Tinderholt's vote, Stickland, myself, and I found out very quickly that people would follow us. People would follow our committee votes, not only in the House, but in the Senate too. There was one time where one of our colleagues passed a bill, and I think we all voted against it, 6 votes against a 150-member House. He comes up to me, and I said, hey, how's your bill going in the Senate? He goes, I can't get it passed. Why? Well, because you voted against it, and all the senators want to know why you voted against it. Well, if you vote on principle, you carry more votes than just your own, which is why every single representative that you turn more conservative is worth more than just 1 vote. It drives the debate. We saw that this session. You know, we didn't get, there was a lot we should have passed with the numbers we had, but we did so much better than we did last session. And that was because of you guys replacing representatives with more conservative representatives, district by district. And let's keep it up. And just one real quick thing, because I think it's very important. Regarding the rankings that Representative Stickland brought up. Now, what I would normally say is it doesn't matter because the 3 of us actually, we always knew that one of the 3 of us would finish first, second, and third. We always knew it was the 3 of us. And I would normally say it doesn't really matter. But every single vote that I voted different from Stickland, I hear from across the House floor, someone screaming, particularly him, Rinaldi! #1! Every single time we voted differently. So I'm going to say, #1, by almost a standard deviation, I think. But thank you very much for having us. Do you guys want to come up and we'll answer questions? Woo!
How are we doing this? We just
sure
answer.
I'll do it.
This isn't a question. I'm just saying thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome and thank you.
The other thing too, the common trait between all 3 of us is we're all really stubborn in a good way, so don't expect to change either. That's the question. Sir.
Do any of you have a conversation with Phil King?
Oh, yes. Go there.
So I've served with Phil for 4 years.
I mean, for crying out loud.
Seriously.
He voted for the doggone bill on giving up tuition to the Mexicans because he didn't read it. It was a favor to a friend. I hate that, and I tell him about it every time I see him.
I will tell you this, and I told both these guys when they came in, this was my policy, and I don't understand why it's not the policy for everyone, is if you don't have time to read the bill, your default vote should always be no. Because I can always come back to any group and explain a no vote. And all I have to do is tell them they didn't give me enough time to read it and understand it. So that should always be the no vote.
Yeah, if they do it,
I just want to point out one thing
bring it
too.
back to the floor.
You could look at the scorecards, and I think you know, like Empower Texans and Rice University's great indication of how people are voting. I did want to give Phil props. One thing you should thank him for is we tried to eliminate corporate welfare in the budget, all corporate welfare and film subsidies, and we only got 33 votes to eliminate film subsidies. We only got 20 votes to eliminate the enterprise fund corporate welfare. Phil was with us on both those, and I was very thankful for that. Yes, sir.
This is my name tag, and I know yours is Matt Rinaldi, but I cannot tell you who the other two guys are. I want them to reintroduce themselves by name.
I'm Jonathan Stickland.
Tony Tinderholt, Arlington.
All right. When you, Jonathan, and Matt got up to talk, my whole, nothing, no offense to you, but my whole attitude has changed in this room. I came in depressed listening to Mark Levin. I came in depressed talking to my buddy. I came in depressed hearing all the stuff that goes on Fox. I was depressed at everything he talked about at VOISD. Heritage didn't help me that much. Hearing about Egg Ranger and all the others up there.
This is why I'm number
But
3.
when you two talk, you showed me positive things that are happening in the state, and I want to hear more of that tonight, if I can.
Well, let me tell you a couple things that'll motivate you, okay? You know how they said we don't back down? The former Speaker of the House was up at the front threatening me personally in my district to take $390 million from my district for transportation if I tried to kill his bill. I looked at him and I said, Mr. Speaker, rule on my point of order and kill that bill, and I walked away, and it died. We killed his bill that fast. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we do down there. And one other thing I want to let you know too is scorecards are great. Scorecards are absolutely amazing, but they are not what we do, why we go down there. They are a byproduct of us doing our doggone job down there. That's what scorecards are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the scorecards, we don't even know what they're going to score before we vote. I'm excited. I want to add 2 things, if you want more, is, you know, Jesus Christ saved my life, okay?
Amen.
He's my Savior, and that's how I try and live my life. And we can't forget, because politically, I'm a doomsday. I got a tinfoil hat. I'm a prepper. I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm getting ready for everything. But we serve a mighty God who, at the drop of a hat, could change this country in any direction He wants to. So that excites me. The other thing that excites me is just seeing, we're out here in Parker County with a crowd like this. It's a big deal. I had a fundraiser event online on Friday. We called it the Defend Texas Liberty Money Bomb. We had 452 individuals donate to my campaign from across the state. From literally, the lowest was $3.50 up to $10,000. We raised $230,000 in 24 hours, which is a state record for any state representative ever. And it ain't because of me or because I'm good looking. It's because people are hungry for someone who's going to tell them the truth and fight.
Right.
And people are waking up to that all across the state. So I am excited, and I promised my wife I will not continue to do this so long as the movement is not going forward. And I got to tell you, every indicator that I see is that the movement is going forward at a rapid pace.
A few of you had mentioned about the
freshman orientation. Could you explain more of that? Is that a formal process, or is it mandatory, or is that something that you can basically, pass on?
It seemed to be a contrived event just to tell us that, and that we have to be effective and get along, and that everybody's in a big fraternity, and basically set up the pressures that they then would use against us later, which basically had to deal with peer pressure, to be honest with you. It wasn't anything more than that.
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's pretty much, they talk about colleagues and hugs and handshakes and go along to get along, and we didn't. That's simple.
Was that meeting set up by the party? Oh, sorry, curious. Okay.
House administration. It's an event that everyone comes down. You pick your desks, you pick your parking place, and they try to indoctrinate you into the system.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the Texas legislation is doing about the Jade Helm 15. Also, the federal supporting the fusion centers, and what's going on with that.
Jade Helm, I was proud that Governor Abbott stepped up and said, we're going to watch this. You know, obviously what happens in Washington affects all of us, but I'll tell you, we take an oath to the state of Texas and the Texas Constitution. So that's my #1 priority. I don't take anything for granted, especially out of this White House. And I think that was the attitude of a lot of legislators, and I was glad that Abbott actually did step up and lead on that. On the Fusion Center, I'll let you. What fusion? What are you talking about with the Fusion Center?
The purpose. What they're doing, what fusion centers are actually consist of, were set up by the federal government. That whenever they do capture somebody that it is not going along with the system, they put them in these fusion centers and deprogram.
Right. I'll be honest with you, I don't know too much about that, but I'm a big liberty guy. We passed the first email privacy bill in the country, which said you have to have a warrant to go through our emails, which a lot of people are like, what do you mean they didn't have to have a warrant? Yeah, it's true, they didn't have to have a warrant. Some of these people some of the crazy stuff that's going on all around the country, I believe there's a lot more legitimacy to it, but frankly, I don't know enough about that to speak to it.
Yes. So we got a bit of time until the next session. What are like the 2 or 3 things the conservative movement should really start talking about at our meetings and kind of prepping for the next session that we really need to push?
To bring us to that, let's talk about a couple of things we did do really fast, and then we can talk about where we're going to go. How many of you out there think border security is important? Raise your hand. You guys should be standing up and jumping up and down, because that was the #1 priority in my district. We gave $800 million to the state of for Texas to fight illegal immigration. I'll tell you what, I don't think it was enough, but we gave $800 million to it. This is the first time in probably decades that we passed a budget that was less than population plus inflation. It's the first time that we actually made some of the transportation funding transparent. There's a ton of things that we did this session, and there's a ton more. We want to do more pro-life stuff. The Democrats, sad to say, the Democrats, they have a lot more power in the House. They have 52 members and we have 98. That should really worry the crap out of you. 98 members, we have a supermajority, we have 52 Democrats, and we can't get pro-life legislation until the last day, at the last minute of the last hour. And we got to play dilly-dally games to try to get it passed. So I'll tell you, pro-life is 1, and additional border security for me is #2.
Strict spending constitutional limits, so people cannot go. We need to bind the hands of the future legislatures so that they can continue to do it. The other thing that we need to talk about that a lot of people know, but we need to really, really beat this in, is 10th Amendment time. It's time for us to challenge the federal government on a lot of these things, specifically, I don't care if it costs us courtroom costs, but we need to, with whether it's traditional marriage or all the stuff that's coming down from the federal government, it's time to invoke that, and nullification in some cases as well.
All right, my 2, the first one's going to be same as Jonathan's. We need some strict constitutional spending cap of inflation plus population growth, in the Constitution that would also apply to local governments and could be overwritten by a bond election. Why? Because if Democrats took power in the state government, they still could not grow the size of government until they got enough of a 2/3 majority to repeal the constitutional provision. We actually have the numbers to do this. That would be huge. Secondly, immigration. We increased border security. We did not do anything to stop the magnets that draw illegal immigrants to the state of Texas. Nothing. We didn't do anything to end sanctuary cities. How many people want this? People want this so much they're going to vote for Donald Trump for president because he's the only person talking about it. Of course we have to do something about this. I mean,
how many of those sanctuary cities do we have?
I don't know the exact number, but I know a lot of the big cities.
You should know exactly how many in Texas we have, because you are in our house.
Well, no, I mean, it's too many. Why should there be any? That's my whole point. You should ban sanctuary cities. Everybody knows it's a problem. It's a problem when they're one. And we need to get rid of them, but we can't do it because we have a House that's run by Democrats effectively with the current leadership, and we have a State Affairs Committee chairman who kills all the bills.
The thing I would say is sometimes that's a fluid number. There's 3 cities in the state of Texas right now that are fighting fighting against becoming a sanctuary city. Corsicana is one of them that's going on right now. So.
You don't want to say how many there are because there are many.
I would love to say.
We're not.
I don't know exactly.
We were all co-authors of the bill to do it. No one's hiding anything. It's just the fact that.
Never get a bill to hide illegal aliens within a city and get it through our House and our Senate in the state of Texas. How did they do that?
Well, the problem is they never did do that, is what I'm telling you. The cities started doing it by themselves, and as a result, no one with the stones down in the House and the Senate have been able to lead to get that bill to stop it from happening. But I don't believe that there was a bill that actually passed in the Texas legislature to enable it. It was an end around that the liberals did. Sir.
How do we get rid of Strauss just short of shooting? Yeah.
There's a gentleman named Jeff Judson running against him. I will tell you that one of the things that I have personally been doing is running around encouraging folks to step up and run in areas of opportunity. We need to make sure that both of these guys who have opponents come back so we lose no ground that we've gained so far. Continue to support people who are running against the bad guys and make sure every single one of these retirements that we keep naming on are filled with conservative voters. That's how we take care of them, or we take them out down in his House district with Jeff Judson.
Thank you. And I do want to point out too, the best thing to do is flip districts. And what's very important is even the districts where the more conservative candidate lost last session, except for 1 or 2 exceptions, the person was replaced with a more conservative replacement. Even in the elections we lost. So we're moving there time after time again. But one of the big things is going to be when representatives look at our primary elections, they're going to look to see what happens when you vote like myself, like Representative Tinderholt. And if we come back against strong opponents, that's going to mean a lot. And if we don't, that's going to be a huge setback. So that's why the primaries are so important, and we'd love your help all we can. We'll stick around and answer questions as well, but we wanted to give Mike some time. Thank you.
I'm not going to take any time. Listen, these guys, are you encouraged now? These guys are excited. I want y'all to know, these guys have jobs. If you don't know, people in the Texas House and Texas Senate, that's not their full-time job. Each one of these guys has real jobs, and they took the time to come all the way over here from HEB, Irving, and Arlington to talk to y'all tonight. So please give them another round of applause for taking